When I finally hit level 60 in New World, it was thanks to the delivery of some chunks of fish. Reaching this milestone in the most anticlimactic fashion really encapsulates the experience of playing Amazon's MMO. It revels in the mundane, whether that's chopping down 100 trees, endlessly running between towns, or trying to make wolves go extinct. This is its superpower, and one of its biggest weaknesses. Some of the best times I've had while trapped in Eternum have really been dreadfully dull. I'd often find myself doing big resource runs in the middle of the night, watching Seinfeld on Netflix while I tried to fill my inventory with ore and wood and herbs for my various crafting projects. With every tree felled and animal skinned, I'd be rewarded with a generous helping of resources, and usually I'd return to town with a few more things to craft. And throughout, I'd get to watch those numbers on so many of my skill meters increase. Like the survival games it often apes, New World makes the simple pioneer life a seductive one. Sometimes I'd spend hours just fishing, followed by turning those fish into delicious meals that I could gobble up during my travels. When my wallet started to feel a bit light, I could also turn the byproducts like fish oil into a quick buck, selling them on the player-run marketplace. Even when I was playing a solitary pioneer, I still felt like I was working away in a dynamic, lively world. When you're out and about, you'll always hear the telltale sign of other players at work, axes thudding against wood, pickaxes striking ore, a reassuring cacophony all around you. Settlements similarly feel alive. They're controlled by companies, New World guilds, and they get to decide how much tax you have to pay if you craft, sell goods, or own a home. They also decide how the settlement evolves, determining the tier of the crafting stations. Sometimes they change hands, and then the priorities change. It's an engaging wrinkle for anyone embarking on the life of a crafter or merchant. The compelling rhythm of gathering, crafting, and selling is unfortunately broken by New World's utterly abysmal PVE. Across nearly 300 hours, I've only encountered a handful of enemy and quest types, which are regurgitated constantly. Even in dungeons, called expeditions here, you see far too many familiar faces, and it's only when you hit 50 that you'll start to see some novelties. Reviewing this, I've wasted far too much of my life waiting for enemies to spawn, hunting the same animals and monsters ad nauseum, performing the same rote tasks over and over again. It's exhausting. Combat is action-based rather than giving you lots of hotbars to manage, which is great, but it's also extremely stiff, and it fails to evolve meaningfully. You can level up your experience with specific weapons to unlock new combat skills, but you can only ever have 3 of these skills active, and weapons never give you more than 6 to choose from. From level 50 on, fights do get a bit trickier, but otherwise there's very little to differentiate a fight at level 10 from one at endgame. PvP is in a better state. There is a faction rivalry at the heart of New World, which sees players pick one of a trio of mostly identical factions and then fight over territory. While territories are controlled by companies, each company is connected to one of the factions, so everyone flying those colours gets some benefit while hanging out in that area. Flipping territories is an involved process that requires a lot of bodies. You need to increase your faction's influence by completing rote PvP quests, which are elevated by the open PvP. Being tasked with gathering 100 wood for a town isn't very scintillating, but it gets a lot more exciting when you're fighting 50 players from an opposing faction at the same time. The crescendo of these faction rivalries comes in the form of the War PvP mode, a structured battle that sees one faction defend and the other attack. Unfortunately, these sieges are controlled by specific companies, ostensibly picked by lottery, but really it's always the most dominant ones. They then get to decide when the war kicks off, and even who gets to participate. If you're not in the company, your chances are greatly diminished, and even if you get into the fight, you can instantly be kicked based on the whims of strangers. It kinda sucks. I find myself in my server's underdog faction, holding on to a single territory with grim determination. We made deals with another faction so we could survive, and at one point we were convinced we'd been infiltrated by moles. It was exciting, until it wasn't. Being an underdog is fun until you realise there are few opportunities to become something better. It's a numbers game and nobody wants to join the losers. When I handed in that fish and hit 60, I'd already had my fill of New World. I liked being a pioneer, I liked fighting other players, but I was sick of Eternum. There's a colonial aesthetic, but otherwise it's absent in identity, and it just never changes. From 1 to 60, it's a big forest full of wolves. But I persevered, hoping the endgame would show me something new. What I got instead was just more of the same. The only brand new feature, Outpost Rush, promised some more structured PvP, but it was disabled on October 11th due to a queue bug, and at the time of recording it has not been reactivated. So I guess I'm done. New World tempts with its simple, mundane pleasures even when you're stuck in a grindy loop, but there are diminishing returns and just too few reasons to stick with it after you reach level 60.